My heart is not proud, Lord. My eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me. But I have calmed and quieted myself. I am like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child, I am content. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore. Have you ever sung a song at church you just weren't quite feeling that day? Maybe a happy song when you were in the midst of grieving, something like that. You just had a hard time singing it because you were not feeling it inside. I kind of feel that way about Psalm 131. This is not my favorite song because even as it rolls off my tongue, it does not describe me. Maybe you feel that way too. I'm like a content, weaned child. Are weaned children content? That sounds like a big change to me, going from what is familiar to unfamiliar. And most of us don't like those kind of big changes and transitions. When I looked up wean in the dictionary, just exploring it a bit for this sermon, an interesting entry came up that gave other words for wean that included disturb, withdraw affections, alienate, agitate, disquiet. That doesn't line up with content. So what is Psalm 131 saying here? Because surrounding that line are plenty more. I do not concern myself with great matters. We do concern ourselves with matters too great for us all the time. For many of us, it's become a way of life. Sometimes our hearts are proud. Sometimes our eyes are haughty. Haughty means arrogantly superior, as in the knowledge I have is the undisputed right knowledge. It's in direct contradiction to what we learned in 1 Corinthians about patient and kind love. The truth that knowledge puffs up, makes haughty, but that love is what builds up. And two, from this song, I want to calm and quiet myself, but I often don't know how. The only line that really makes sense is the last one. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore. Okay, I can go for that. I like hope and God and forever. We can do that. We can hope. We can change and grow and be nurtured by God, where we put our hope and our forevers. And I think that's the point of this whole psalm. If you've ever learned something that you can't possibly learn overnight, whether playing the piano, algebra, golf, or trying to get a recipe just right, you already know that something worth learning takes time. We have a saying in some of the athletic circles that I have run in through the years: if it was easy, everybody would do it. And if you have lived as a follower of Jesus for any time at all, you already know that following Jesus takes time. It takes daily commitment. You have to stand up some days, dust yourself off, and decide not to give up, not to quit, to just keep going. which is exactly why endurance is one of the main themes of the second and third generation Jesus followers in the New Testament. But the theme of endurance is not new to the New Testament. It goes way back. In fact, we can trace this big idea all the way back to the Exodus, when the people of God were wandering out in the desert for years with no direction home. Back when they had no idea when they were ever going to get where they were going. And do you know what Moses and Aaron and the Levites and ultimately God told the people? Just keep walking. And then years later, when the people were again in exile in Babylon and it was time to go home, and they started singing the songs of ascent that we are singing these days out of Psalms 120 to 134. Do you know what Ezra and Nehemiah and the other leaders told the people? Just keep singing. And then years later, when Jesus told the people and tried to get it through their thick skulls that they had way overcomplicated the life of loving God and loving one another, do you know what Jesus told the people? Just keep loving. And then pick any point in Christian history when Christians got off track, or even when things were going pretty good, there was and is always the temptation to treat God and church and one another as an afterthought. So do you know what we preachers are supposed to say at times like these? Let us all together just keep sacrificing our pride and trust God. Just keep trusting. Psalm 131 is aspiration. It is hope. It encourages us to keep trying, to keep on keeping on, especially when we want to throw our hands in the air and wonder what it's all for. The reason we don't identify at first with the words is because they are a setup. They invite us to do what the songs of ascent actually do best. They invite us to reach for more, to ascend. Psalm 131 is aspiration, because we do concern ourselves with too many worldly things, too many things that are out of our control. We spend too much of our time focused on things that we could not possibly change. We talk current events and then usually realize somewhere along the way, at least some of the time, that we concern ourselves with things way beyond our reach. So what about those things that are within our reach, that we can live? And why am I preaching this sermon out in the woods, talking about these kinds of things? Well, one of the reasons is because it's easier for us to live Psalm 131 when we are kind of out by ourselves and we don't have any distractions. Because when I think about the times that I hear the word aspire used in conversation, it's almost always paired with the phrase to new heights or to great heights, as in aspire to new heights, which is perfect. For these psalms, these songs of ascent in Psalms 120 through 134, we ascend to greater heights. We know that God is always taking us higher, even if the only thing that ever means on earth is for you to know, in the eyes of God, your life is precious. Your life has value. But in keeping with such an aspiring affirmation, we need to keep in mind that Psalm 131 is a confession psalm as they return home, remembering that it was their pride that sent them into exile in the first place. They did not wind up in Assyria, Babylon, and eventually under the Persian Empire because God woke up in a bad mood one morning. That's not it. I had a student one time who cheated in my class. Now, mind you, I taught Intro to Old Testament to undergraduate college students. He cheated in a class about the Bible. And then he had the audacity to confront me with the question, "Dr. Christian, why did you give me an F in your class?" And I told him, not sarcastically, although I am fluent in that language, but I told him with great sincerity, "I did not give you an F. You earned it." Israel did not arbitrarily receive their time in exile. They earned it. And so, as Psalm 131 either welcomes them home or at least hopes for a new home one day in the future, which is pretty much where we are, it also couples that hope with serious confession. They remembered to give up their pride and lean completely upon the Lord instead. Lean not on your own understanding, but on the Lord. This aspiration psalm is a call to sacrifice our pride, us, now, today. Forget about Israel in the 6th and 5th centuries, hundreds of years before Jesus. This is no longer about them. It's about us, our pride. It's time to give it up. In Christian history, some teachers taught that love is the root of all the virtues, the source of everything associated with the fruit of God's Spirit. On the other hand, Augustine said that the root of all sin, that the source of all the vices, is pride. I never get tired of watching Jesus Christ Superstar, the movie from the 70s. In one of the opening scenes, the disciples are in a frenzy, repeating the two phrases, "What's the buzz? Tell me what's happening," and "When do we ride into Jerusalem?" They are like children swarming around a parent right before vacation. Is it time yet? Is it time yet? And then once we get in the car, when will we get there? Are we there yet? You see, long after the original circumstances of Psalm 131 and the other songs of ascent, long after they rode into Jerusalem, they grew prideful again, arrogant again. So that by the time we get to Jesus, the people of Jerusalem are going through the same old song and dance. And we must not fail to embrace the lessons of those who went before us, who let their pride get in the way of their hope in the Lord. Because even if we get to go home on this very day, God will be the same God, and we will still be walking with God. In another scene in Jesus Christ Superstar, the character of Jesus looks at everyone who is in yet another big frenzy. Everyone is trying to get Jesus to be what they want him to be, which is the point of the musical. They are not listening to Jesus, but instead just trying to get Jesus to live up to their own expectations. I have a big lesson for us and for any generation, apparently. In the musical, during one of these frenzies, Jesus begins singing, "Neither you, Simon, nor the 50,000, nor the Romans, nor the Jews, nor Judas, nor the 12, nor the priests, nor the scribes, nor doomed Jerusalem itself, understand what power is. Understand what glory is. Understand at all." There is something to be said for the teaching, "Lean not on your own understanding." For our understanding is often rooted in our own pride. And apparently, if some of the teachers from the past are right, pride is at least a big source of our shortcomings. When our hearts are too proud, our eyes are too haughty. when we try to carry around on our shoulders the weight of the entire world. I think I know what Psalm 131 is trying to tell us, is trying to do. God wants us to aspire to more than our limited pride of this temporary world. We speak the ideas of this song into existence, knowing that God is at work in us. What if Psalm 131 does the aspiring for us? What if Psalm 131 wants us to object, and in so doing, to confess our lives as we fall short of the glory of God? What if it is a lifelong process of humbling ourselves in the sight of the Lord, especially when we are surrounded by all the frenzy and distractions and noise? Because this is where it gets hard to actually live 131. Because it's at these points that we spend our lives hoping, with faith, that the Lord will lift us up, the one in whom we place our hope, our entire lives for that matter. What if Psalm 131 is trying to teach us something? My heart is not proud, Lord. Let go of your pride. I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me. This world is not where our true hearts live. But I have calmed and quieted myself. I am like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child, I am content. You can allow yourself to rest in God's care, at least for today, right? Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore. And that's for us. We are Israel. Not a place, but a people. Put your hope in the Lord now today, and then again tomorrow and forever. Sacrifice your pride and put your hope in the Lord.